Hey,
Hey, Solomon.
all right.
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty well, man. I'm pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing, I'm doing pretty well myself, actually. Not too many complaints. Life's been pretty
Good.
good.
That's
So,
good, man. That's good. Yeah, it's
hey,
been
Jens.
Hey, hello,
nice.
hello.
Hey, Hans, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. We were just
Mhm.
saying that life's so good we can't complain, so that's good.
No.
Hold on. No, I didn't say I can't complain. I'm just saying life's been good. Like, they don't necessarily cancel each other out.
True, true.
All right, all right.
No, in fairness, though, it's been pretty good. I did have some topics I wanted to bring up during this call. I had a chance to think about some stuff.
Sure.
Um, but we'll get through the meeting minutes and all that.
I have
Well,
one
that's
too.
why.
I have one as well, and maybe it might be similar to yours, might not. I
Okay.
don't know. We'll find out.
Yep.
Cool. Let me get this thing started. There we go. Slideshow. Cool. I just hit a 7th. Wow. I am off. Sure, I didn't do that anywhere else. Okay, just there. Cool. All right, let's go get started. Welcome. It's the 13th of July already. I can't believe we're in the second half of the year. Wow.
Oh,
Time is
right.
flying. Time is flying. Time is flying. Our obligatory antitrust policy notice. Everybody that hasn't read it should probably read it. It's pretty straightforward. And as everybody knows, this is a safe place. We talk about data and use, acceleration and adoption of our technologies, but we want to make sure all members feel welcome and we can all participate in a harassment-free experience. So I had one thing that I put on the discussion list, and it sounds like you might have a couple, Michael, and Jan's, of course, you can throw in as well.
Mhm.
But let's just hop right in. So it's just three of us today. We'll say hi to anybody that comes along. The meeting minutes, I did look over them. Thanks, Michael. Everything looked good to
Yep.
me, so I consider them approved unless anybody objects. It's such a small group right now. And we can just hop right in. So I think this is good. I've been noodling since our last talk around, sort of payments, as maybe a use case or a standard that we might want to like try to build something around. Um, and I've, had some time to reflect on it. So we were talking like, credit card payments and cross-border payments and just really generally how it's a friggin' mess. I mean, the standards are all radically different depending on what you're doing. The amount of fraud and corruption that you see, especially abroad, because there's no real regulators sitting in the pipeline of the transactions.
Right.
So there's just a lot of just chaos. If everything was in just the EBC, Bank of London, and the Fed, I think things would be pretty clear. But that's just not how it works with a decentralized network of banks. So I've sort of got this proposal of an idea of a confidential payment standard, something that sort of brings together hopefully a little bit of both worlds, the credit card side as well as the traditional wires and ACHs, but Swifts and all the pieces because they're all in my mind like, they're all doing pieces of the puzzle, and rarely does they do all three things at once, which is messaging, compliance, and settlement. They're just everywhere. So that's sort of where I wanted to take. I got a couple slides that I put up, and I've started a document that still needs a lot of work before I feel good sharing it with anybody. That's sort of what I want to start, and I'll open the mic as well to you, Michael. You said you had a couple topics on your mind.
Okay. Yeah. So it really just is to been thinking about how can we increase attendance for this, right? And more specifically, like who do we actually want to attend? I mean, obviously, we want who's ever interested, please come and attend, right? But who specifically around targeting? And the more I reread our mission statement and what we're trying to achieve, I think it has to be people from the auditing and assessment world. So a campaign around reaching out to people that say like PwC or Deloitte or KPMG that do a lot of audits and assessments, as well as some of the more niche or specialized groups like ones that do FedRAMP. So they have to be three CPOs, which are basically accountants, CPAs. I think you have to be a CPA firm to do those. Which I've never quite understood why, but that just is the requirement. Same thing around some of the payment, PCI assessment teams like Coalfire or Shellman. So what I'd like to do is spend some time, maybe by next meeting, what that campaign may look like to increase our awareness amongst those teams and how we craft a message that entices them to send a representative, come and participate. I know we're trying to be vendor neutral, and I think we still can be, but these are the groups that I think may also have contacts within various regulatory bodies to help drive that engagement as well.
Right.
So that was topic one. And then the second topic was I was looking around the consortium, and it came out of let me backtrack a little bit. So internally, I have a couple of POCs going with some vendors with some SaaS vendors, not necessarily in the confidential computing space, but it involves confidential computing, specifically AWS's version of it, because that's where a lot of our data currently is. But I was presenting that to our senior leadership and got a couple of questions around, what's the regulatory landscape look like? What's the push? And, I was very frank and honest with them that, we're working on that, but that's probably going to be the big stick that hopefully we'll get to some of the regulatory. But I did share with them, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has a call out for confidential computing, and DORA mentions, data and use protections. So I called out some of those, but I didn't have them like ready right in front of me. Just stuff I had remembered previously reading. And I thought I'll just go to the consortium and find these, and find. And I went on the consortium website and I couldn't find easy enough a link to the various regulatory frameworks that either allude to or state specifically confidential computing as a technology solution to meet certain requirements. So I thought that would be a useful time for this particular working group, if there isn't one that's created, that we publish something like that out, and then we make it part of like a monthly refresh or something like that. It could even be like quarterly, because regulatory bodies don't tend to change their requirements very often. But we publish something out, and we don't publish it out with an opinion. We simply publish out specifically what the regulatory framework says and the actual text, and we start with that iteration of it first, and then build upon that once we gain more membership and get a few things going as far as inputs goes. So I wanted to put that forth as an idea of something.
I like it, like a library, it's a catalog.
Yeah,
pull it together. So I think that's helpful. I'm with you. I've been in similar situations where, I like, we should use CC for this, and they're like, who's telling us we have to? I'm like,
and you're like, well, do things just because I'm told to do them. But it's good, right? Vendors have it, right? Like Anjuna has a listing of all the frameworks that are. Now, I'm going to caveat that with, I think they take some liberty with some of those interpretations. Not to call out Anjuna or anything, like I appreciate them evangelizing, but some of the ones I read, I was like, okay.
Well, there's marketing versus like academic.
Right. I don't want this to be another marketing campaign. I want it to be. That's why I'm proposing first we just simply put out exactly what the framework says, and the CC thing.
Well, how about we start a doc and we just like list in that doc links, all that, to share it amongst the team here, and from there we'll recruit more content, and we should probably talk to Mike and probably is it Rain to see if is there a resource for us to like post it officially as the CC. I'm assuming it's just we could have a website or a document.
Simple spreadsheet spreadsheet style website where we list these. And I think you're hitting on something there. I also find it hard to believe that I'm the first one that thought of this, So there may be a very good reason as to why there isn't something on the consortium website. So it'd be useful to find it out as well.
Well, I think we get the content regardless, and we figure out the publishing, limits we have. Can we do it? Should we do it? Bunch of different things.
Yep.
So cool. I'm
Those are the two
down with
things
that.
that I had.
Those were good 2 things.
Nice.
Jans, how about yourself? Anything on your mind that topical?
No, I think these are fantastic topics. Just from my side, MITRE is going to be published tomorrow.
Nice.
Yes. So I shared it internally, by the way, Jans.
Yeah.
Your write up. The link to the LinkedIn post and also the actual paper internally. So it's right now in front of, and it was very helpful. Thank you, because I use it as part of that conversation with senior leadership. And so they were very interested because we are a big, I want to say we're a big MITRE shop, but we do rely heavily on MITRE for a lot of our threat modeling, threat catalog guidance. So.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And if you have any comments, so tomorrow when that website goes live, it's a dedicated website at MITRE, this framework.
Yeah.
And
perfect.
when that
I'll make
goes
that
live,
announcement internally as well.
Perfect. Because everyone it's a public review. So we want opinions from the industry, not just from the defense sector. We want it from the industry. So you will be able to submit your own review on that website. So we would massively appreciate any feedback.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Absolutely.
This is great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Things are clicking.
I also shared internally, I didn't share the actual document, but I took out what I thought to be the key points of the CACAF. I shared that internally as well, because internally we're writing control objectives around confidential computing. The people writing it, I think, could be well informed by some of the stuff we've discussed in the CACAF. So I shared it across with them to say, I saw your control objective. Maybe think about it this way. So that was very helpful as well.
Awesome. Hey, Ab, see you popped in. Good to see you.
Hi, sorry I was late. Just want to meeting.
No worries.
No worries.
We're just getting through a couple of topics, and just to recap, Mike, you want to recap your 2 topics?
Sweet. We got Neetu here. Awesome. Hey, Neetu.
Hi, Neetu.
Hey, Neetu.
So Neetu works over here with me at JP Morgan Chase, and she actually owns the confidential computing effort inside of Chase as product owner for it. So very excited to have her join. Thank you so much, Neetu.
We don't hear you, but we did see you on mute.
Hello. Still. Yep. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Kate. Nice to meet you too.
Excellent. So we were just about ready to hop into another topic, but actually, Michael, since we have 2 fresh ears, do you want to recap your 2 ideas?
For Ab and Neetu. So I'm suggesting that the 2 things to put some effort into. One of them is driving greater attendance and what the attendees that we're looking for to attend in the audit and assessment space, since that's kind of what we're describing here from a regulatory and standards mission statement when I was reading through that. And so for our next call, maybe in 2 weeks, have a rough framework on what that campaign would look like to reach out to people like the companies like PwC and Deloitte and KPMG, as well as like Coalfire and Shellman and Verizon, as well as maybe some CPAs because you have to be a CPA to do FedRAMP assessments, that see if we can entice them to come and participate in this working group, because a lot of what we're going to be creating and trying to influence is heavily in their space. Right. And they may also have contacts within those regulatory bodies that we're trying to get engagement with to help drive that conversation there as well. So that's one idea that I'm going to put forth some effort into over the next 2 weeks for our next call. If anybody'd like to assist, greatly appreciate it, especially like Jens and Ab and Salman, if you guys internally share out who you guys work with from that perspective, you know, and then we can maybe get a list where we have some commonality on those and have those reach outs. Same thing, me too, obviously. Anything that we have here, Chase. And then,
Sorry, Michael,
sure.
just sorry.
Yeah.
What profile? I mean, you mentioned PwC, Deloitte, all these. So, what the type of profile of person is? It's like whoever, let's say, at PwC works with like government relations or something like that. Like, I just want to understand what you're
No, so
talking about.
more or less, yeah. So more or less, somebody at PwC that would come in and do a SOC 2 assessment for an organization, or somebody
Okay.
would come in and do leaving aside PwC because I don't think they do these FedRAMP assessment. Somebody at a CPA firm that does the actual FedRAMP assessment. I think those are the people that we really actually want to first reach out to. Because we're going to rely on them for some of the assurance, you know, how do you actually assess this from an assessor perspective for confidential computing? What is it actually solving for? We're going to want their voice, I think, as well as their contacts. So somebody with that in that line, the
I
people who
see.
are
Okay.
doing some of the assessments. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, like with that, obviously their voice will be important. That's definitely the case. Is the is one of the benefits or kind of side benefits is also, you know, if any company would like to use. I'm just trying to see how to make it a win-win for everyone, including
Mm-hmm.
for these firms, right? So, like, if it's that could be potentially a new like business for them to assess on the confidential computing. Is that what you had in mind? Or I don't know if that's. Oh my, I don't want to put words in your mouth here,
Yeah,
but
no worries. Yeah, no. Right now, no. Not necessarily like something that you can brand on that we do confidential computing assessments, right? But potentially, what I think would be maybe a hook for them, in my mind at least, what could be a hook for them is a lot of these practices not just do the assessment, but they do the architectural recommendations for their so if they're read into this technology and they understand how it can be used and what it solves for, it may inform their architectural offerings that they give to their customers potentially. Now down the road, sure, if like we ever get to a place where we're actually have certified CC assessors, you know, that based on the CACAF level, then you know that might be something as well that could be an add-on for them.
yeah, no, even if it happens, it will be really down the road.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, ultimately will could be something that will be of interest to them. I mean, there's a lot of in audit firms that, I mean, you know, and even other Linux Foundation projects where where they you have certified like, but that's the thing, we have trademark or like some certification level, and then becomes like these are approved, let's say CCC approved. Um, anyway, maybe I'm dreaming here, but maybe we could.
No. I think
Yeah.
no. It's yeah, definitely something that the other benefit that they have or they may have is a lot of these organizations tout the fact that they were able to influence certain regulatory frameworks, right? With updates, they're the organizations that the regulatory bodies reach out to for requests for comments and to help guide future regulations. So that could be another potential for them is that, you know,
Yeah,
as we
that
this
makes
work,
sense.
and if we get engaged with those regulatory bodies, they can add their name onto that as being contributors to it.
I'll ask it. I personally don't have a contact, but I'll
Yeah.
ask internally what AMD is doing and see if there's inviting them to join the call.
You
Is it on a regular basis or just kind of like, you know, as a guest kind of to the call?
No, on more, in my mind, on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that would be great. I agree.
Yeah.
That's if they can spare time, and yeah, absolutely.
And
okay, makes sense.
a good contact would be maybe so I don't think AMD did this, but Jens, I believe, as part of your MITRE work, you engaged with a third party to do the actual assessment validation of the environment, like from an opinionation perspective. So an organization that does that maybe for AMD to verify some of the claims that you're making as far as the SEV S&MP service, that would be an organization that we'd want to come to this.
Yeah, I got one other just sort of angle. In traditionally in hardware security modules, HSMs, very boring things, but you have to go through it. You go through two sort of paths. You go through common criteria, which is supposed to be sort of international, and there's a lot of organizations that do CC work to certain levels, right? And so they always have a bunch of folks that are just looking at the constant change to CC. So one path for us might be that, is there a CC for CC, or something around that, like compute becomes part of a regime of technology. So a good example would be, Fortanix. They ended up using Intel's SGX to build their HSM with, and they went and got it common criteria, and they went and got it FIPS to a certain level. And so both of those paths, both common criteria and FIPS, are all around the crypto, all around the TEE, all around these things, but they've traditionally been for HSM or crypto modules. So I think there's some discovery we could do around, is there a path or a community to engage with that might be able to, guide us, or we can guide them.
I would just say this is like I'm all open for obviously discussing everything. Just common criteria is painful. I would say.
I'm not saying it's easy. I'm also saying we don't have to do it. We're looking for people that own these problems, though. That's what we're going to do.
Totally,
the reason I bring it up
is
saying,
like, and you can see that how many hardware vendors like try to achieve it, and that tells you how much. And this is not the lack of not wanting to meet. Same with FIPS, right? When you start to get to level 2, especially level 3, you start to kind of get to the same, but common criteria is like brutal right away. So I find it very anyway.
Well, the reason I bring it up is it becomes the base for many other certifications. So
100%.
BSI, for example, right? They build their whole approved product catalog off of CC. 95% of it's CC, and then they do this 5%, which is special sauce you have to prove in front of the BSI. So anyways, I don't want to derail from us going forward with the conversation. I think that there are going to be other regimes of already existing frameworks that we can either learn from or engage with. And speaking of BSI, Dr. Wetzel, who came and we first did the first presentation to, he wants to know how he can get involved. So this could be something where he comes in as somebody regularly on these calls from a government regulatory perspective.
Yeah, that would be great. Absolutely.
Cool. And then I think Michael's last or second item was on a catalog of, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was that I was doing this presentation for some of our senior leadership, and they had asked, is there a lot of external regulatory requirements for this? And we all know that that's not really there yet. It's getting there, but it's not there yet. Yada yada yada. And I knew a couple of them off the top of my head around, Monetary Authority of Singapore and DORA and stuff like that calls out either specifically confidential computing or alludes to data and use protections. But what I noticed when I went to the CCC website, I didn't find this information. I had to source it from a bunch of different places. And I thought, why we should probably have this published out either through this SIG or at least on the CCC website, not necessarily offering an opinion on why confidential computing meets that requirement, like that's to come. But at least we should have listed on the website as a resource these particular regulatory frameworks as published, call out the use of confidential computing or data in use protections. And just share that out in plain text at first, and then we can iterate over it, keep it evergreen, take a look at it every, every quarterly or whatever, because regulatory bodies don't change their wording very often, but it's something that we as a SIG could produce and publish out, and then use that as again another resource that the community we're trying to influence can leverage.
Good.
So okay, so that one is kind of straightforward to do. Are we okay with starting that? Like, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I'm okay with taking that on. What we are going to do is Simon suggested, and I agree that we should talk to Mike, and I think Raina is her name. Raina. And because although I like to think I'm pretty smart, I'm probably not the first person to think of this. So they may know like why they're not doing it, right? There may be a real reason why they haven't done this. So find that out. If there's no real reason, it's just no one thought of it, great. Then how do we get this actually shared out and what it should look like?
Yeah, I think we should start with a doc so we collect the content while we're figuring out where we can put it. Even if it stays internal to this group for guidance, that'd be a really good resource as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is, yeah, definitely as at minimum as an internal resource for the members. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not, sometimes LF can be like, I'm not saying that's the case here. Maybe that just didn't came up before, but if there's resistance, we were able in the past to push some stuff online when we explained. I think mostly often not resistance, but like their guidelines are more about like you don't want the website to become like a commercial, like promotional website, right? So that in this case, actually, we're talking about regulation. So again, I think between Mike and I think if he will definitely get the right guidance there, and then whenever if we can start a document maybe in the SIG folder, and then whether we go then on the website or not, that would be like a second phase.
So I'll share that out before our next call. I'll put it in the SIG folder. What I found, and like again, this will just be kind of black and white text. It won't be a lot of rationalization. Although I may include a couple of comments in a column, just thinking, especially when they talk about data obfuscation or data and use protection, why I thought this made sense. But the why I thought won't be included in whatever we publish out for consumption.
Okay. Yeah.
And we can look at it on the next call, I think. Maybe, yeah.
Sounds great. Awesome.
Yep. So
thanks, Mike.
things I had.
Thank you, Michael. This was great. And with that, let's shift gears. So as I opened up with, I've spent a little bit of time thinking through and talking to just different stakeholders I know in the payments space, and it's really two types of payments. Credit card payments, while it's still pretty straightforward, it's actually really complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of players, who's a issuer, who's processor, and they all have different parts to play in making a payment settle, and the speed and velocity are always different. And the same thing, it's even worse or more exacerbated in the cross-border payments or wires, Fed wires, SWIFT, all these different terms you probably are familiar with of just how they try to move capital around the world for all sorts of reasons, from oil and gas transactions and moving rice from one country to another to settling a mortgage in some cases. It's really comes down to the technologies, the jurisdictions, they're all a little bit different. So the overall objective is, is there a space in here where confidence compute can actually add value and provide potentially a standard to guide these sort of industries towards, because they're all standing on their own jurisdictional or regulatory feet. If you're inside the US, you're behind the Fed and FinCEN and those sort of bodies looking for sanctions and anti-money laundering. If you're in Europe, you've got the ECB and EU and a lot of other guidance locally in your own jurisdiction. If you're in Asia, it's it's a lot of noise. And same within Africa and others. It's really sort of decentralized because of the centralization of the banks, but the individual environments and individual transactions are like just they're pieced together per transaction, which is a little bit crazy. So anyways, the idea here is, could we look at one of the key sort of like goals that even the Fed has expressed interest in, which is, can we finally get to a place where messaging, compliance, and settlement are all in one transaction? And unfortunately, it's a challenge. You got to sort of split up into different pieces. Like Swift is a very good example of messaging, but it doesn't do compliance or settlement. It gives instructions about what you're supposed to do about those two things, but it doesn't actually do it. And so while a lot of these sort of existing frameworks and standards that come with them, including ISO 20022, these are all around messaging frameworks and formatting and things along those lines. It has very little to do with the actual infrastructure and how sound and secure it is. PCI, though, on the other hand, is since you're a former QSA, Michael, I don't want to steal your thunder, your thoughts, but I've always looked at it as it's got really good rails, but still has lots of options, lots of players, and lots of potential places for interpretation to cause challenges. And again, it does help with the settlement, but settlements can be done on the back end between the institutions. It's never done between the merchant and the customer. So it's all these pieces are on different rails doing different things, and putting a common framework together is sort of what I'm looking to explore. And there's really 4 pillars that I think would really disrupt, or really not even disrupt, more like settle the industry a bit, which is you have to make sure that you're able to handle sovereignty bound compliance. Every nation, every jurisdiction, every state, even here in the United States, potentially can have different regulations or requirements for anti-money laundering, or what is a good transaction, who's recognized as a sovereign nation. All these things are going to be unique to a perspective of where you're sitting. But also really looking at that second piece that I think is so important is the atomic settlement. You need to bring everything in one transaction, or everything at least in one flow that has a sequence that, if interrupted, it rolls back. If corrupted, it rolls back or eliminates it. Like, it really needs to be something where the settlement is the last thing, but you have to build up to that settlement. It's not the first thing that happens. And the last 2 are really leaning on us at the CCC. I think the confidential infrastructure, there's something you said, Michael, I think it was 2 meetings back or something, where the attestation of CC and what it brings just isn't really explored well enough or used heavily enough. I think in a lot of use cases here, it could be actually the thing that holds it together. Without it, it doesn't move forward. Right? If I have 9 steps to get from an issue, a Swift message to move $5 from my account to your account on the other side of the planet, there might be 9 steps between them, and each of those steps would need to have attestation that the environment, the tooling, the tech, everything was certified. Right? The tech stack itself could very well be part of a certification catalog. You're running microservice 20, version 27 that is supposed to handle the compliance check inside of the United States. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't go to that next step, which could be the correspondence confidential compliance check. You know what I mean? So it's like bringing and building upon a series of attestations, almost like a zipper that you have to zip up. And if it gets stuck, you got to pull it all the way back. And the last bit is that cryptographic, verifiability. I love I love the idea of having something that has high confidence and high security and high compliance requirements, and being able to prove it was confidential, it did have integrity, but also that verifiability. There's going to be some parts where, you know, the counterparty's name should not be sitting on certain parts of the stack or flowing through. So the data itself might very well need to be protected, but in some cases proved with things like zero knowledge proofs, which is, you know, it's still, I mean, zero knowledge proofs aren't like brand new, but their adoption is becoming more prevalent. And it's got some really good use cases when you start looking like, is this really a U.S. citizen with a U.S. passport, but not actually show the passport? Just prove that it really is what it is. So those are the four pillars that I thought of around this sort of mission. Like I said, trying to get towards a common set of requirements that CC could bring in, at least with numbers 3 and 4, a very strong, you know, value add that you just don't get off the, you know, off the traditional technology stack. You don't get it from Swift. You know, there's no other vendor or no other, you know, use case out there really that can handle this, except for something like confidential in my mind right now. And it could be vendor agnostic and work across a lot of different versions of something like this. So I got one more slide, but I want to pause here, see if there's any support, any objections, any, like, you know, abandoned ships, thoughts.
I had a question. So, and it may sound devil's advocate, but it really is a general question. Wasn't the blockchain meant to kind of solve for this?
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. So then, so I know it didn't, but I'm curious as to like how.
Yeah.
I just imagine that's like one of the first questions. Maybe that'll be it. But go ahead. Yeah.
So all the adoption. And I'll answer that, and then I'll open it up. The other, so the existing blockchain support out there, so like Circle, Tether, and so forth, that's really bringing blockchain into a world that's still backed by deposits, treasuries, whatever that might be behind the scenes, but it's not universally available. You have to have a corporate account with Tether to go get Tether things, or you buy it in the secondary market. It has nothing to do with settling sort of payments. There's the other side of it, which I believe, I think JPMC, you probably guys are pioneering in some of this stuff. I do know that it's being used for some non-traditional transactions. So they would be just straight up blockchain or some kind of cryptocurrency transaction. It's not the same as like using blockchain to settle your mortgage exchange, or buy a helicopter and you know, somewhere in Europe. Like, you gotta have all these things that goes through. So it is a technology. It hasn't become a standard, to my knowledge, outside of like I said, Tether and a couple other, like, more the cryptocurrency side.
Okay.
Ito?
So one of the thing is, a lot of the institutions end up using HSMs for payments.
Yeah, I know, because I make them. I used to be at Talos for 20 years.
So that's where I wanted to, you know, bring in that there's a combination of like, after HSMs, do we need confidential computing? If yes, then how? You know, so that could be something to think about. The other thing that I wanted to bring in was, I know this is focused on like the payment transaction standard, right? But there's also the payment transaction data usage, right?
Yep.
Because in MarTech, marketing technologies, that is critical, and a lot of the industry use cases in MarTech for confidential computing are intersecting, right? So I was wondering if there's a standard for, if you're using payment transaction data, then this, you know, it could cover like, was it procured and how is it procured and how is it used, etc.
You know, it's actually a really good point. Maybe it's not confidential payments standard. Maybe it's confidential transaction standard, and you could be using that for marketing, for payments, for all sorts of things.
Exactly. The payment data is so precious. It's a gold mine, right? How people are spending. So, and that has so much more usage. And even though like with FIPS and all, HSMs have defined how payments or, you know, how HSM should be and all that. But what is the new use cases are less defined, right? When you're using transaction data to profile people.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
what's the standard for that?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great points. And I wrote that down. I think I'm going to rethink this and maybe come back with CTS or something along that line and build on some other use cases. Just highlighting your point about HSMs. Yeah, I've been around HSMs my whole career since the 90s, and I was at Thales for a long time, Tomalto. It's a small world of devices out there. And I think the part that I like about what you brought up is traditionally what goes inside the HSM is a very, very, very long tail of standard. Like you got to be like a payment HSM, for example. That standard is still a wire. It's still a wire protocol, and it has been and will probably never change for 30, 40 years now. So I think what we have the opportunity of is we can look at HSMs as roots of trust, or we can look at them as transaction facilitators, which is what they do in the payment HSMs. General purpose HSMs don't really fit in that world unless it's like a loaded module, like that it was custom built or whatever. But for the most part, there's some standard that leans them that way. And I guess my question here as CC is, you know, are we at risk of being cannibalized, some of our functionality being cannibalized into a future HSM, you know, update?
Fortranix does talk about confidential computing, right?
Yeah.
So there are some HSMs who are talking about confidential computing.
Okay.
And I think one of the thing is, or at least the vendors that are claiming that you probably don't need as many HSMs or you don't need HSMs, you can do with
Right.
confidential computing. So I think, I don't know about the standards part. I'll not speak on the standards part because I haven't read, but from a consumer's point of view, is like, that's very attractive to me. Do I not need an HSM if I'm a small, smallish company and all that? Can I just do confidential computing? But that doesn't seem right either, right? So what's the clarity between when you need confidential, when you need a payment HSM, and when you need a combination of both, or how can you optimize on both? I think that's a very interesting problem to look into.
Yeah, and I think for the credit cards, for sure. Yeah, I think that's yes. But I think if we were to look at like Swift and like all the other non-credit card, they all use
Zelle,
HSMs as well, right?
yeah.
That everything underneath the hood is HSM based, and you're right. There's a big attraction to not have an HSM because they're expensive, but it's actually everything around them that's expensive. It's all the people and you have to keep expertise that is not easy to keep, and so it's an opportunity for us to figure out where is the CC value add, because you might need one HSM for one thing, but maybe you can get 80% of the rest of your fleet could be confidential for doing other parts of it.
Exactly. So in my mind, that is the confusion, from a customer's point of view, is like, let's say I have HSMs. Now, what can I get with confidential computing? Because HSMs are already the standards, and I meet all my payment standards now. Then the layer will be, maybe you need fewer HSMs, right? So then how exactly, like it, and will the standards then agree that yes, you are using confidential computing to and you're using a combination of HSM. So to me, that is not clear. And if somebody has it clear, that would be, I'd love to learn.
Yeah, well, that's part of why we're putting this up here. Is I think we need to find those spaces to learn from or lean into.
Right.
I think the PCI world, I don't proclaim to be on the auditing side as much as you did, Michael, but I think there's a understanding of what is out there that might be on the table for replacement by CC or augmentation by CC.
Yeah, for PCI, where the challenge gets there is that the DSS, the data security standard, currently states you must have an HSM for these transactions and to keep your encryption keys. So until they update that, well, actually no. Now that I think about it, so the standard says that, but they adopted 2 years ago this customized approach, which hasn't been very well received, but they allow for it, where the requirement says X, but if you do Y and meet the intent of what the requirement is through this customized approach, then you can do this, and your QSA is okay with it, then you can do this alternate implementation method so long as you met the intent of the requirement. So tying it back to this, if the confidential compute solution can meet the intent that is described that mandates the use of an HSM, then conceivably an acquirer or a merchant or a authorizer could use confidential computing in place of an HSM. That's interesting. I'll take a look at that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think going back to your earlier point about marketing data, like it's not PAN, right? It's not the card data, but it's the
Right.
transaction itself. It's the what was bought, like all that stuff that's really valuable. That's something that's, I mean, it's hit or miss based upon where you are. Like if you're in the EU, you're going to have GDPR concerns for like the identifier stuff.
Yeah.
And then the transaction stuff, you might have some, rules and things you have to follow here in the States. And like there's these newer emerging, standards that come out later on that, they have nothing to do with the PAN. They had everything to do with just the fact that it's confidential information of the user or their behavior. And so maybe that's the part where we focus on.
Person identifiable information.
Yeah. And it's even like, there could be anonymized stuff, and that anonymized stuff could be attributable, right? I mean, tokenization gets you so far until you can put it back together. Most transactions we put back together with only like 3 identifiers. It's crazy. I don't know if I believe it, but that's what I've heard. So, but the idea being like there's a space in here, which is like I was saying earlier, like the fact that it's a payment or it's, a very large, wire, whatever it is, there's this like pipe that could probably be secured and tightened and really augmented by CC to make sure it's not just encrypted in memory and all those great things, but the attestation every step along the way, we can prove it. Blockchain, like you said, might be a piece of the solution that we put together, or as a standard. That could be how somebody implements it. But the idea being like every step has to be stamped, basically.
DLT especially, I think, is a very prime use case for confidential computing, right? Because the very essence of if one transaction is compromised, then the whole DLT is compromised.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So to me, I am surprised that there are no standards for it. Are there standards for it? Like, or how are they meeting the requirements that they could meet using confidential computing today is my question.
Good point. I mean, that any node in the DLT will have access to some data, like, a lot of transaction information, so forth, will be part of just being like Ethereum or whatever. They see a lot of the transaction. Doesn't mean they see the payload. Doesn't mean they see the tokens or whatever. It's going to be what's inside the envelopes, really.
With the risk of tampering of that node, if you commit a wrong transaction or tampered transaction, right? Then basically the whole DLT is off the table, right? So is what is today in place sufficient?
I think if we looked at DLT as a technology to facilitate the stamping along the way, yeah, it's going to be very sufficient. Yeah,
the standards for it.
I don't know.
So because then we will work backwards from it, right? If the standards are there for a transaction to be tamper proof and all that, right? Then how are people meeting it without confidential computing, right? And then if they're meeting it without confidential, but then what is the advantage of meeting it with confidential computing? Sorry, I'm just giving questions. I don't have any answers, but just
okay. That's the type we want, right?
Aloud.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if the Linux Foundation itself has an opinion here. They have an interoperation standard.
Because these are some of the adoption challenges I am facing. When I go to people, it's like, hey, you should adopt. It's like, yeah, it sounds cool, but I'll come back to it when I come back to it. So then I need to be able to clearly articulate them. This is your risk. This is what you're doing, and I'm not equipped with with standards and current usage. And is it even vulnerable? And if it's not vulnerable, then of course they're going to say, yeah, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. I'll take an action to get a little bit more details for the next round, because today I really just want to make sure I put the idea out there. If it's something we want to explore, I think I'd like to explore it more.
I think, definitely very interesting idea.
I think the CC could be seen as like, we're going to try to help create this, at least where it's being in use, whether it's DLT, whether it's a database, whether it's an old-fashioned handshake with a server, it's done inside of a confidential environment, and it's tested, and like each of those steps along that thing might be very valuable. If everything was done by DLT, then I think there's no reason for us to deal with this other than the memory security. If it's a mix and match is what the world is today, is like it's DLT might be part of it, but it's not all of it. It's not it's not the first mile, it's not the last mile. It's somewhere in between usually. So I think there's a space to explore more, but I really appreciate the feedback, and I've got some follow-up things to hunt down. Excellent. Any other thoughts, comments? Any idea? Cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. With that, any other new business or topics for next time that we want to prepare for?
I don't have anything.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I do have the governing board update this week. I'll just based upon our last two sessions. Is there anything in particular?
Have they provided any guidance on the CACAF or?
No, I think other than let's get it to the TAC, and then nothing happened. So I'll take the action to get an answer from Mike about how he wants to take that next step.
Right.
Yeah, we have our next session on the governing board on Wednesday.
Yep.
So, and we have quite a packed agenda.
Okay.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just put I'm part of the agenda. I'm just put in like we want to get the CACAF out of our hands and into the TAC.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
I'll put
because I think that'll well, I think there's a few ways we can then start to use that, but it also can then be used as part of our messaging campaign to those audit and assessment companies. To
absolutely
entice them to attend. Maybe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I will push from my side on both the board and in the TAC. So
awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Excellent. I got nothing else. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Everybody have a wonderful week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
I'll do the meetings as soon as the video is uploaded.
Thanks
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.